Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive. Tonight's story is titled, The District That Doesn't Sleep. Let the shadows speak.
Part 1. The Wrong Turn. You ever hear of a place called Morningside? That's how it always starts, with some harmless question tossed out over cheap beer in a downtown bar that smells like old sweat and fried onions. Morningside, I asked. Sounds like a retirement home. Tanner, the guy who asked, didn't laugh. He leaned in, lowering his voice like someone might be listening. It's a part of the city no one talks about. Hell, most people don't even remember it exists. I snorted. Come on. It's a city, not a damn haunted house. He shook his head slowly. Not haunted, just wrong. You won't find it on a map. But if you take the number 11 bus westbound past 11 p.m., sometimes the driver takes a detour through it, just for a block or two. Then it's gone. He wouldn't say more than that. Just clinked his glass against mine and changed the subject like he hadn't just tried to plant a worm in my brain. I didn't believe him, of course, until I ended up there. I don't sleep much. Night shift security gigs will do that to you. My new post was at a corporate storage complex. Warehouse units, cameras, and silence. Not glamorous, but it paid better than being a bartender. The job started that Monday, and the bus ride was longer than usual. I got on the 11 at 10:50, earbuds in, zoning out to statusy ambient music and the soft drone of rain against the windows. At some point, I realized I didn't recognize the streets we were turning into. The lights outside looked different, older. Flickering gas lamp-style posts leaned toward the pavement like crooked teeth. The bus was mostly empty except for a woman in a red scarf and the driver, who stared straight ahead like he was afraid of making eye contact with his own reflection. I checked my phone. No signal. No GPS. No Wi-Fi. Just one new notification I hadn't seen before. Welcome to Morningside. I blinked. It disappeared. That was when the woman in the red scarf turned to me. Don't get off, she said softly. I hadn't planned to, but then the bus stopped, and the door hissed open, and I stood up like someone had pulled invisible strings in my spine. The street was quiet. Too quiet. No engines. No foot traffic. No wind. Just rows of massive Victorian houses packed too close together, like a lineup of hunched corpses in Sunday best. The bus pulled away without a word. No warning. No second thought. I turned around, already regretting everything, and saw that the street sign read, Sable Row. Never heard of it. Didn't matter. Something felt off. The sidewalk was clean. Too clean. No gum, no cigarette butts, not even dust. The air smelled metallic, like the tang of pennies or blood left too long in the sun. I walked slowly, unsure of where I was going. I passed 5 houses, every window dark, every curtain drawn. At the 6th house, a porch light flickered on. A sound came from inside. Forks clinking on porcelain. Laughter. Polite. Rehearsed, like a dinner party on repeat. I know how stories like this go. The smart character walks away, calls a cab, runs home. End of story. I'm not that guy. I stepped up onto the porch. My hand reached for the doorknob, and the front door swung open before I could touch it. The hallway beyond smelled of lilac and mold. Light spilled from the dining room. The laughter stopped. Someone in the next room said, "He's early." I should have run. God knows I should have run. But instead I stepped inside, and the door closed softly behind me. Part 2. Guests and Ghosts. The air inside the house felt thick, like breathing through gauze. Wallpaper peeled in curling strips down the hall, and the floorboards under my boots let out soft, aching groans. A brass chandelier overhead flickered with candlelight, though I didn't see any actual candles. The smell was stronger now. Perfume. Decay. Something sweet underneath, like rotting fruit. "Come," said a voice. Not loud, not angry, not even particularly welcoming. Just inevitable. I moved forward because I couldn't think of a reason not to. My hand brushed a framed painting in the hallway. 3 people seated at a table, faces blurred like smudged oil, all staring straight ahead. As I looked closer, I realized the wall was lined with portraits just like it. Every one of them showed a dinner table. Every one of them had one chair left empty. The dining room was immaculate. 4 people sat at the table, 2 men, 2 women. Their clothes were elegant, dated but clean, like they'd stepped out of a 1920s catalog. Their faces, however, were stretched too tight across bone, smiles too wide, eyes too pale. One woman lifted her wine glass to toast me. "We were beginning to think you wouldn't come." I stood frozen just inside the room. The man at the head of the table motioned to an empty chair beside him. "Sit. You're among friends." "I don't know you," I managed to say. My voice sounded dry and small. He chuckled. "That's the point, isn't it? Nobody knows anyone here." "Not really. Not in Morningside." The room went quiet. The other guests turned to look at me. All at once. Then they laughed, soft and mechanical, like the echo of an old record player. I sat down. I don't know why. The place setting in front of me was already filled. A plate of raw meat, slick and red, steaming faintly in the candlelight. I couldn't tell what kind of meat it was. I didn't want to ask. "What is this place?" I asked. The woman across from me leaned forward. Her fingers had too many knuckles. "This is a house, dear. Just one of many." The man beside her grinned. "Morningside is full of homes. And homes need dinner guests. Haven't you noticed the bus is always late around here?" I blinked. They weren't speaking in riddles. Not really. It was worse than that. They were telling the truth. I tried to stand up. My knees didn't cooperate. The man at the head of the table sighed and set down his fork. "You're new, so I'll be polite. But the neighborhood doesn't take well to rudeness. It's not just this house. All of us are hosts, and we must all be fed." "I didn't come here to be fed too," I muttered. They chuckled again. Too in sync. Too practiced. He tilted his head. "We're not going to eat you, Matthew." That stopped me cold. "I never told you my name." "You didn't have to," said the woman beside me, whispering now. "You belong here. We always know our own." Suddenly I felt cold. Not just skin cold, deep, spine-deep cold. Something was in the walls, or behind them, or beneath the floor. The lights flickered. There was a low hum coming from somewhere in the house. A sound you don't hear so much as feel, like pressure changing in your skull. Then I noticed the other pictures on the wall behind the table. They were photographs this time, of dinner tables, just like the painting outside. Only now the missing seats were filled, one by one. And in the last photo, the seat where I was sitting now was already occupied. By me. "I think I should go," I said. The man smiled. "You'll find the doors don't open until dessert." I didn't wait. I pushed back from the table, staggering into the hallway. The chandelier above buzzed. Sparks dripped from the ceiling like fireflies falling in reverse. And then the hallway wasn't empty anymore. Something was coming up from the basement stairs. Dragging. Giggling. A wet, writhing shape. Fingers that didn't end. A face like melting wax and television static. I turned and ran up the nearest staircase. Behind me, I heard the clinking of silverware and the soft words, "Don't forget to say goodbye." The second floor was worse. Empty bedrooms lined both sides. Each one was different. One looked like a child's room from the 1960s, one like a 19th century nurse's quarters, one covered in plastic sheeting and red handprints. All felt wrong, like I was walking through other people's memories or nightmares. And then, finally, I found a door that opened. Inside was a study, dusty, cold, and filled with journals. 100 of them neatly stacked. Names on the covers. None were mine. I opened one. The handwriting was sharp and desperate. Don't eat anything. Don't speak your name. Don't answer the phone. I flipped to the last page. One sentence scrawled like blood. Once you're in Morningside, it remembers you. And underneath, a photo taped to the page. The woman with the red scarf. Part 3. The red scarf and the recordings. I don't remember leaving the house. One moment I was staring at the photograph of the woman in the red scarf. The next I was outside. Not free, no. Just relocated. Still in Morningside. Still trapped in that quiet place where the shadows felt too thick and the buildings leaned too close. But I was standing in front of a different house now. Narrower, darker. No porch light this time. No sound from inside. And in my hand was the journal. I never picked it up. There was movement across the street. I turned in time to see her. Red scarf, long coat, eyes too tired for her face. She stood under a flickering street lamp like she'd been waiting for me. She nodded once, then walked away without a word. I followed, not because I trusted her, but because nothing else in Morningside looked like it knew how to leave. We walked in silence for what felt like hours but must have been minutes. The streets were all variations of the same unsettling aesthetic. Weathered mansions, manicured yards that never grew, windows like blind eyes. No trash, no insects, no breeze. Eventually she led me to what looked like an abandoned office building wedged between two homes. It had no sign, no markings, just a door with a frosted glass pane and on it, 3 words scraped by hand. Do not enter. She opened it anyway. Inside was a cluttered lobby, dusty vinyl chairs, a receptionist desk, broken filing cabinets. The air smelled like dry paper and static electricity. The woman gestured to a stairwell in the back. She spoke for the first time. Top floor. You'll find the others there. Others? I asked, but she was already gone, the door shutting softly behind her like a breath being held. I hesitated, then climbed. The top floor was nothing like I expected. It was a recording studio. Not modern, more like one from the 70s with reel-to-reel decks, thick glass panes, foam walls, and wood paneling. The place felt untouched, yet still humming faintly with electric life. Someone had been living here. There were sleeping bags in the corner, a lantern, a stack of notebooks, and a tape recorder sitting in the center of the room, still spinning. I pressed play. A voice crackled through the dusty speakers. Female. Shaky. Desperate. If you're hearing this, then the house let you go. That doesn't mean you're safe. Boss. My name's Riley. I came to Morningside in January. I've been here for, I don't know how long anymore. The clocks don't work. The sky never changes. But time still moves. You feel it in your body. The voice sounded tired, but still fighting. Morningside isn't a neighborhood. Not really. It's more like a threshold, a liminal zone. You don't find it, it finds you. Or maybe it makes you find it when you're too worn out to resist. I followed someone here. I thought she was lost. I think she might have been the bait. Another pause, a faint shuffling, breathing. If you want to survive, follow the rules. Don't accept gifts. Don't sleep in the same place twice. And if you ever see your reflection blink when you don't, run. The tape clicked. I sat in stunned silence. Riley. Someone had been here before. Possibly still was. Maybe even more than one. That meant I wasn't crazy. but also that I wasn't special. That last part felt heavier than it should have. I stood and turned to leave and froze, because through the glass pane of the studio door I saw my reflection, except it was smiling. I wasn't. I didn't run. Not yet. I backed slowly into the hallway and closed the studio door, heart pounding in my throat. I looked for the stairwell and saw that it was gone. Not collapsed, just gone. Replaced by another hallway that hadn't been there before. Longer, narrower, with doors on either side, each one slightly ajar. My phone buzzed. Still no service, but there was a new notification again. Pick one. I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed not to, but something in me knew I had to move. The hallway felt like it was watching. I picked the door at the far left. Inside was a bedroom. Not mine. Not anyone's I knew, but familiar in that dreamlike way, like a room from your childhood home, filtered through fog and wrongness. There was a desk, a dusty cassette deck, and another tape, labeled Your Turn. Part 4, Your Turn. I stared at the tape labeled Your Turn. It was already inside the cassette deck, like it had been waiting. I pressed play with a trembling hand. No static this time, just my own voice. If you're hearing this, then you've made it to the room. That means it's already inside you. My stomach dropped. You think you're escaping, but Morningside doesn't work like that. It lets you think you're moving forward. Really, it's just winding you tighter and tighter until something snaps. I didn't remember recording this, and yet, I knew it was me. The voice continued, "You saw Riley's tape. Good. That means she led you here. She always does. Don't trust her. She's not what she looks like anymore." The tape clicked off. I hit rewind, then play again. This time, nothing. No voice. No hiss. Just silence. I left the room fast, heart hammering, vision tunneling in and out like I'd stood up too fast from a dream. The hallway had changed again. Longer. Darker. Now lined with mirrors. None of them showed my reflection. Except one. The mirror nearest the end. It showed me, yes, but not as I was now. This version of me had bruises on his neck, blood on his knuckles. His eyes were sunken, teeth not quite right. He lifted his hand and beckoned. I backed away, turned, and found myself face to face with the woman in the red scarf. Only now the scarf was soaked, not with rain, with something darker, thicker. Her voice wasn't a whisper anymore. It cracked like broken glass. "You weren't supposed to listen to that tape yet." I stepped back, fists clenched. "Who are you?" She tilted her head slowly. Someone who used to think she was getting out too. The building shuddered around us, walls warping like breath drawn through rotten wood. The mirrors cracked one by one, but no sound followed. Just fractures forming in silence. The woman held something out to me. A folded map, drawn in red ink, or maybe blood. It didn't show a normal layout, no city grid, no streets. Just symbols, house shapes, moss. One road that curved endlessly back on itself. In the center, a name written in trembling script. The Hollow Mile. "What is this?" I asked. Her answer was almost a plea. "The last road. The one they can't watch. If you find it, you might make it out." "How?" She looked at me with hollowed eyes. "You have to pass through the house that doesn't move." "What does that mean?" "You'll know it when you see it. Just don't stop walking. Don't look out the windows. And no matter what you hear, don't speak." She shoved the map into my hands, then backed into a doorway that hadn't been there before. "You've been here before, haven't you?" I asked. She froze, then smiled. Not kindly. "Some of us never leave. We just forget we stayed." And she vanished into the dark. I left the building with the map tucked into my jacket. Outside, the air felt different, staler. So, the neighborhood wasn't pretending anymore. The illusion of life, distant traffic sounds, blinking porch lights, swaying trees, was gone. Now the silence was complete. Not even the buzz of electricity. Every house on the street had its door open, inviting, or maybe daring. I didn't know which house was the right one until I saw it, tucked between two drooping willows, 3 stories tall, painted bone white. Unlike the others, this house had no address number, no lights, no porch, and it was humming, like a heartbeat through walls. I stepped inside, and the world behind me blinked out. The inside of the house was bigger than it looked, much bigger. Rooms branched into rooms, hallways looped, gravity twisted, floors tilted. One staircase spiraled downward and upward at the same time. It was the kind of architecture that didn't care about rules, a space built by memory, not design. I saw things in the corners of my eyes, children without mouths, a man scraping his face off in a mirror, a woman writing names on a ceiling in blood that never dripped. None of them reacted to me. Yet, there were no windows, no clocks, just hallways and doors. Some were locked, some whispered, some bled. I opened none of them. Instead, I followed the sound, that hum, that vibration. It was louder now, almost familiar. Eventually, the hall opened into a chamber, round, vast. The walls covered in tally marks, dozens of hands worth, some scratched in wood, some carved deep in stone. In the center was a chair, facing away. Someone sat in it, breathing, shallow, raspy, like wet paper being torn one strand at a time. I stepped forward, and the figure in the chair turned. It was me, but older, much older, pale, much, eyes like cracked glass, lips stitched shut with thread made of hair. He held out a hand, in it a mirror. I looked into it, and saw myself sitting in that chair. Already. Part 5. The Self That Waits. The older version of me didn't speak, couldn't. The thread stitched through his lips was too tight, the knot sealed with dried blood. But his eyes, God, his eyes, they screamed, they begged, and they knew me. He handed me the mirror. The moment I touched it, something jolted through my spine, like cold water rushing the wrong way through a straw. The room shook, not violently, just subtly wrong, like the house was adjusting to accommodate what came next. I looked down at the mirror again, expecting to see my reflection. Instead, I saw a different room, a hallway, a red door at the end, and someone walking toward it, me. When I looked up, the old man, myself, was gone. The chair sat empty, threads hanging loose, drops of blood staining the wood. But the mirror remained in my hand, and I somehow knew that I couldn't leave the room until I found that red door. The problem was the house had changed again. The chamber I was in had 3 exits now, none of which I had used before. And on the wall, newly carved into the plaster, choose right and lose time. Choose wrong and lose self. No signature, no guidance, just that. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. Morningside was a parasite. That much was clear now. It didn't just feed on people. It fed on their perception of time, of place, of identity. The real trap wasn't the doors or the houses or even the monsters. It was that, slowly, you stopped being able to tell which parts of you were still yours. I picked the middle door, because middle felt neutral, felt least like surrender. The hallway beyond was impossibly long. Black and white checkered tile lined the floor, and red curtains fluttered along the walls, though there was no wind, no windows. Each curtain concealed a mirror, and behind each mirror, something watched me. Some version of me, In one I had no mouth. In another I was burning. In another my reflection moved half a second after I did. But I didn't stop, didn't blink, didn't speak. Eventually I reached the red door. It looked exactly like it had in the mirror, tall, rounded at the top, made of thick, lacquered wood. No handle, no lock, just a peephole. I leaned forward and saw an eye staring back, but it wasn't mine. It blinked. Then the door creaked open. Beyond the door was a circular room. Another one, but smaller, more personal, like the inside of a cathedral that had forgotten its purpose. In the center was a woman seated on the floor. Riley. She was older than before, barefoot, her scarf gone, her eyes red from crying or not blinking. Her fingers were coated in ink. All around her were notebooks, hundreds, each labeled with a name, and one of them had mine. "You came back," she said, voice distant as if underwater. "I don't remember ever leaving. That's how it works. This place doesn't let go, just stretches your memory until you think you escaped." She held up the notebook with my name. "It ends differently every time." I took it from her, flipped through the pages. There were entire chapters of my life I didn't recognize, jobs I never worked, lovers I never knew, deaths I hadn't died. I stopped at one page near the end. It had a hand-drawn illustration. Me, sitting in a chair, thread through my lips, just like the version I'd seen. "You've seen him?" she whispered. I nodded. She smiled, but it was sad. "That means you're close." "Close to what?" "To becoming part of the city." She stood, knees trembling. She looked thinner now, almost translucent. "This place isn't just a trap," she said. "It's a collection." "Of what?" "Versions of people, broken pieces, whatever's left when the story ends but the character won't die." She walked to the far side of the room where another door had appeared. Her hand rested on the knob, but she didn't turn it. "You still have a chance to break your loop, but you'll have to go deeper." "What's deeper than this?" Her eyes met mine. "The mile." I remembered the map, the hollow mile, the one place Morningside couldn't watch, or so they claimed. I pulled the mirror from my pocket and looked into it again. This time there was no hallway, no red door, just darkness, and a faint sound in the distance. A voice, distorted but familiar, whispering one word over and over. "Run." Riley stepped aside, gesturing to the door. "It only opens once. If you go through, you can't come back here." "Why help me?" I asked. Her answer came without pause. "Because once someone helped me, and I failed. Maybe you won't." I turned the knob and stepped into the dark. Part 6. The Hollow Mile. The moment I stepped through the door, the world shifted. There was no transition, no fade to black, just a sudden and absolute elsewhere. I stood on a long, narrow road under a black sky that never blinked. No stars, no moon, just darkness that didn't move, but watched. The road stretched out infinitely ahead, flanked by endless rows of street lamps. They cast no light, just long, quivering shadows on a ground that didn't feel like pavement, more like breathing stone, warm and subtly pulsing. And there was no sound, not even the sound of my own breath. I began to walk. With each step I felt less, not weaker, not older, just less me. I couldn't remember what day it was, or what month. My legs moved, but I had to remind myself how. My hands looked wrong in the dim. Too long, too thin. Something was unraveling, slowly, but surely. I walked for what could have been minutes or days. There were no clocks, no sun, just the mile. The only markers were the figures along the road. They weren't moving. They weren't alive. Just statues? Each was different, people frozen mid-motion, a man weeping into a phone, a girl holding a broken violin, a woman shielding her eyes as if from a blast. I reached out to touch one. It blinked and whispered, "Almost." I stumbled back, then kept walking. The statues grew more detailed as I moved, more familiar. I started to recognize their faces, people I'd passed in my life. A barista, an old teacher, a bus driver, all caught in some half moment of grief or terror. And then I saw her, Riley, or a version of her, arched backward mid-scream, scarf fluttering, mouth too wide, a single tear carved into her stone cheek. I touched her hand. It was warm and pulsing. That's when I noticed the others. Not statues this time, but reflections, in puddles that hadn't been there before. Pale, rippling versions of me, dozens, hundreds, walking just out of sync with my stride. Some limping, some laughing, some turning slowly to look directly up at me. One pressed its hands against the inside of the water like it was glass, and it mouthed the word, "Liar." I looked away, walked faster. Then I saw the end. Not a door, not a house, not even a wall. Just a mirror, massive, freestanding in the road, framed in twisted wood and bones. The surface was dark, reflective but clouded, like obsidian soaked in milk. And beside it, a small wooden chair, empty, waiting. I approached the mirror slowly. Every instinct screamed, but I couldn't stop, because deep down I already knew. This was the real test, the one Riley never reached. My reflection looked back, but it wasn't me, not anymore. This version of me had no eyes, just empty sockets weeping black. Its hands were wrapped in barbed wire. Its chest was carved with tally marks, but it smiled, not cruelly, not warmly, just knowingly. Then it spoke, with my voice, "You know what you have to do." I stepped forward. The mirror pulsed. A vibration ran through my skull like a tuning fork pressed to bone. "Sit," the reflection said. I turned to the chair and sat. And the moment I did, everything shattered. I wasn't on the mile anymore. I was everywhere at once. Flashes of memory hit me like waves. My first bus ride through Morningside. The woman in the red scarf staring without blinking. Riley's scream buried beneath a tape recording. The stitched lips of my older self. The clink of forks. A red napkin. The words, "We've already eaten." Then silence, and one last sound. Footsteps, approaching from behind. Slow, heavy, inhuman. Then a whisper right behind my ear. "Welcome home." Part 7. The Dinner You Forgot. The whisper behind me faded, but the cold stayed. The chair I sat in pulsed softly, almost like a second heartbeat pressing into my spine. I couldn't move. The mirror in front of me had turned black. Not dark, black, like a space with no end. No floor, no ceiling, just absence. And in that void, something shifted. A shape began to form. Not a reflection, a window. Through it I saw a room, candlelight flickering, a table, and 4 people, smiling, waiting. Silverware already placed, wine already poured, 1 seat left empty. "We've already eaten," said a man I recognized, the pale man, from the house, from the very beginning. He looked straight at me through the mirror and said, "We've been expecting you." Suddenly I was there, not physically but seeing, feeling. A memory? A projection? No, a relived moment. I stood outside the dinner house years ago, younger, cleaner, with no idea what waited inside. I rang the bell. A woman opened the door, red scarf. Only it wasn't Riley. It was me, smiling, welcoming. saying the words, "Don't worry, they don't bite much." I gasped. The scene flickered, shifted again. Now I was at the table, not sitting, serving, a silver tray in my hands. On it, a napkin, red, still damp. I watched myself bend, offer it to a guest whose hands were trembling. The guest looked up at me, and it was me again. Another version, younger, confused, just arrived, mouth opening to ask something that would never be answered. My head ached, memories folding into each other. I had been the guest, the server, the host. I'd lived this loop before, countless times, each time forgetting, each time returning, each time becoming something else, until now. The black mirror rippled again. Now I was back in the chair, still trapped, still watching, but now remembering, and in front of me stood my older self, the one with stitched lips. He reached out with trembling hands and touched my face, then spoke, not with voice but inside my skull. The loop held because you never asked why it needs to exist. Ask. The mirror shimmered. 1,000 eyes blinked open inside it, each one mine, each one different, and then they all whispered, "Ask." I swallowed, then spoke aloud. "Why does Morningside exist?" The house groaned, the mirror cracked, and the void behind it opened into something else entirely. A dining hall, endless, thousands of tables, thousands of chairs, all full. Every seat held a version of me, older, younger, hollow, bleeding, laughing, crying. Some looked human, others didn't anymore. Some had extra limbs, some no faces, but they all stared at me and said in one voice, "Because you chose it." "No," I said, "I didn't choose this. I was pulled here, trapped." The voices responded, "You came willingly. You were tired of being forgotten. You were desperate to belong to something." The image shifted again. Now I saw the first night, the real first, a cheap apartment, empty fridge, late bills, no calls. I'd looked out the window and whispered something I barely remembered, but now I heard it clearly. I'd give anything to be part of something permanent. And something in the dark had listened, had reached, had marked me, and now I understood. Morningside wasn't a prison, it was a bargain, an ancient one, a pact made not in blood, but in loneliness. I was part of it now, a function, a role, a guide, a lure. Maybe that had always been me. Maybe this version, the one asking questions, was the aberration. The loop wasn't trying to trap me. It was trying to correct me, to fold me back in. My hand twitched. The chair beneath me began to sink, like it was being swallowed into the foundation of the house. Back into my assigned place, back into the system. The mirror cracked again. Now I saw Riley, standing at the edge of the mile, watching, crying, holding the map, and tearing it in half. "You can still leave," I whispered, though I didn't know if I meant her or me. The mirror flashed white. One final vision, me, sitting at a table, holding a fork, and whispering, "I'm so hungry." Part 8. What Remains. The light in the mirror faded, not like a bulb turning off, more like a memory being erased. And when it was gone, so was the room, so was the chair, so was the mirror. I stood alone back on the black road of the hollow mile, except now it wasn't a road, it was a circle. There was no up, no down, just space that turned every time I took a step. I wasn't walking forward anymore. I was orbiting, around what I couldn't say, but I could feel it in the middle, something ancient and hungry. I shouted, screamed, begged. Nothing answered, except the echo, I'm so hungry. The voice came from me, but not my mouth, not my mind, just something buried deeper, the part of me that had made the deal. That's when I saw the light, faint, flickering, a flame in the dark. I ran toward it and found Riley. She was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the looped road, surrounded by torn-up pieces of the map. Her hands were shaking. Her mouth was stitched shut, just like the older version of me, but her eyes were defiant. She held something out to me, a key. I took it. She pointed behind me, and for the first time there was a door in the mile. Simple, wooden, with a brass handle, and a word carved into it, exit. I turned back to her, heart pounding. She shook her head slowly, then pointed to herself, then to the ground, then to me, then to the door. The message was clear. Only one of us could leave. I hesitated. Everything in me screamed to run, to take the key, to end it, but I couldn't ignore what I'd seen, what I now remembered, all the lives I'd touched, or infected, all the people I'd lured here, because I was lonely, because I had whispered into the night and asked for permanence. Riley nodded again, tears in her eyes. I stepped back, pressed the key into her palm. Her hands trembled. The flame beside her grew brighter, and then the ground beneath us shifted. The mile cracked, the dark groaned, and the door flung open, blinding white beyond it. She looked at me one last time, then stepped through. The door closed and disappeared. Silence. I sat where she had been, cross-legged, hands in my lap, breathing slow. The light was gone, but I was not afraid. I understood now. Morningside didn't trap people. It answered a question. What would you trade to never be forgotten? And I had answered. Somewhere far away, a bus rolls down a street it doesn't usually take. A passenger glances out the window, sees a neighborhood that doesn't appear on any map. They ask the driver, "What part of town is this?" The driver shrugs. No one answers. And outside from the sidewalk, I watch. Sometimes they see me, sometimes they don't. But when they do, I always smile. Wait. And ask the same simple question. Do you believe in ghosts?
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.